The Luminarian High Council chamber stretched impossibly large, a perfect sphere of crystalline architecture that defied traditional spatial understanding. Holographic projections danced across surfaces that seemed to breathe with living light, each subtle shift representing millennia of accumulated knowledge. Vornak sat at the periphery, his junior analyst status marked by his position furthest from the central decision-making platform. His six-limbed body was a study in contained tension, 3 manipulation appendages carefully folded while his sensory tendrils remained hypersensitive to the surrounding data streams. The current presentation droned on. Another routine stellar survey, another potentially inconsequential planetary system. Most of the senior council members had long since entered partial hibernation mode, their consciousness floating through background data networks while maintaining a semblance of attentiveness. But something caught Vornak's attention. The blue planet rotated slowly in the holographic display, its surface a chaotic tapestry of blues, greens, and swirling white atmospheric patterns. Unlike the sterile, perfectly managed worlds within the Luminarian Imperium, this planet pulsed with an almost organic irregularity. Sector coordinate Epsilon 97. The presenting analyst intoned, her voice a perfectly modulated frequency designed for maximum information transfer with minimal emotional engagement. Designation: Sol System, third planetary body. Species classification pending. Vornak leaned forward, his sensory tendrils extending microscopically. The planetary network was unlike anything in the known galactic database. Transmission signals crisscrossed the globe in patterns that defied traditional hierarchical communication models. No centralized control, no unified command structure, just chaos. Anomalous communication patterns detected, he subvocalized into the council's shared neural network. Most ignored him. Junior analysts were not expected to interrupt presentations. But the data was fascinating. Multiple communication protocols existed simultaneously. Wireless networks overlapped with physical infrastructure. Information spread in nonlinear, almost viral patterns. Where other species maintained strict, controlled communication channels, this planet seemed to thrive on unpredictability. The presenting analyst continued her monotonous report. Technological development. Pre-unified state. Multiple competing economic and political systems. Potential for external intervention. High. Recommended protocol. Standard containment and gradual cultural integration. Vornak's internal analytical systems worked overtime. The planet's inhabitants, humans, the report called them, seemed simultaneously primitive and complex. Their technological development was uneven, with pockets of extraordinary innovation existing alongside regions of apparent technological stagnation. Most critically, their communication networks suggested something the Luminarian Imperium had not encountered in thousands of cycles: true adaptive intelligence. A senior council member, Grand Analyst Krellmax, noticed Vornak's intense focus. "Something intrigues you, junior analyst." The question carried the weight of potential dismissal. Vornak chose his words carefully. The communication networks. They're not just transmission systems. They're alive. A ripple of mild amusement passed through the council. Alive. Communication networks were tools, not living entities. Yet something in Vornak's analysis suggested a different understanding. Little did the Luminarian High Council know that at that very moment, somewhere on that blue planet, humanity was already watching back and preparing. The server room hummed with a low, persistent vibration that most people would find maddening. To Sarah Chen, it was a lullaby of technology. Each server blade a sleeping giant of information, waiting to be awakened. It was 2:37 a.m. when the first anomaly pinged. Most network security specialists would have missed it. The signal was microscopic, a quantum whisper barely distinguishable from background electromagnetic noise. But Sarah's fingers had spent more time dancing across keyboards than most people spent sleeping. She'd rebuilt her first computer at 10, hacked her high school's network by 13, and was working security for a cutting-edge research facility before most of her college classmates had landed their first internships. The anomaly didn't just not match any known network signature, it didn't match any known physics. Sarah's custom-built monitoring system, a labyrinth of code she'd been perfecting for years, began to isolate and analyze. Most systems would have crashed or triggered standard defensive protocols. Hers did something different. It began to listen. "What are you?" she muttered, lines of custom decryption algorithms scrolling faster than human eyes could track. The signal was elegant, too elegant. It moved through network pathways like water through a complex hydraulic system, not breaking anything, just observing, mapping, probing. Her phone buzzed. Her mentor, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, was calling. "You see it too," she answered before he could speak. "Something's penetrated our most secure networks." Marcus's voice was a mix of excitement and concern. "But it's not like any intrusion we've ever seen. It's more like, it's taking a photograph of our entire digital infrastructure." Sarah's fingers were already moving, creating nested virtual environments, setting up recursive honeypot networks. She wasn't just going to block the intrusion. She was going to study it, understand it, and then, if necessary, send something back. The alien probe had made a critical mistake. It assumed human networks were like other species' communication systems, hierarchical, predictable, easily mapped. It didn't know about people like Sarah Chen. Her first response wasn't defensive. It was a question, encoded across multiple network protocols, using the communication method that was part cryptographic challenge, part mathematical poetry. "Who are you?" The message was a trap, a puzzle, and an invitation. Buried within its elegant structure were recursive algorithms that would begin mapping the very source of the alien signal, complex linguistic patterns that would take advanced intelligence weeks, if not months, to fully decode. In the sterile server room, with only the soft blue glow of status lights and her multiple monitors, Sarah Chen was humanity's first line of defense. Not with weapons, not with military might, but with pure, unbridled human curiosity. And the aliens were about to learn that curiosity could be the most dangerous weapon in the universe. The Geneva Interdisciplinary Research Center looked more like a chaotic startup than a high-stakes global defense initiative. Whiteboards covered in complex diagrams stretched across entire walls, each surface a kaleidoscope of mathematical equations, linguistic patterns, and what could only be described as organized madness. Dr. Elena Reyes stood at the center of this controlled chaos, her dark eyes scanning the room with a predator's intensity. Around her, a team that defied every conventional understanding of collaboration worked with a singular purpose. There was Miguel Santos, a Brazilian linguist who had spent years studying indigenous communication patterns, now decoding alien signals with the same passion he once applied to vanishing tribal languages. Next to him, Dr. Aisha Okeke, a Nigerian quantum physicist, was rewriting the fundamental understanding of information transmission. "It's not just a language," Elena explained, her fingers tracing holographic projections of the alien communication network. "It's a system so rigid, so perfectly structured, that it becomes its own weakness." The alien communication protocol was a marvel of technological precision. Each transmission followed exact mathematical principles, with zero tolerance for deviation. Information flowed like water through a perfectly designed canal system, efficient, predictable, controlled. Humanity's response would be anything but predictable. Miguel's breakthrough came from an unexpected source. "Look," he said, pulling up a display of internet meme propagation. "How human communication actually works." A meme about a dancing cat could spread across continents in hours, mutating, changing, acquiring layers of meaning that its original creator never intended. Where alien communication saw information as a precise instrument, humans saw it as a living, breathing organism. Dr. Okeke's quantum algorithms began to map this chaos. "They're treating communication like a computer program," she muttered. We're treating it like a conversation." The first intentional response was both a work of genius and absurdity, a carefully crafted message that was simultaneously a linguistic puzzle, a mathematical challenge, and a cultural inside joke that would take months to fully decode. At its core was a simple yet complex idea. Information is not just transmitted, it's shared, changed, reimagined. The alien communication network began to experience something it had never encountered. Noise. Beautiful, chaotic, unpredictable noise. Social media became an unexpected weapon. The TikTok trend here, a Wikipedia edit there. Millions of individual actions that, to an alien intelligence, looked like random interference. But to humans, it was a dance of collective creativity. Alina watched the first successful transmission with a smile that was equal parts scientific triumph and pure human mischief. "We're not just talking to them," she said to her team. "We're teaching them how to truly communicate." The Luminarian communication network, which had remained unchanged for millennia, was about to experience its first genuine virus. Not a technological infection, but something far more dangerous. Human creativity. The abandoned Silicon Valley warehouse looked like something between a mad scientist's laboratory and the world's most chaotic hackathon. Exposed circuit boards hung from magnetic walls, holographic displays flickered with impossible algorithms, and in the center of it all stood Marcus Rodriguez, a man who had turned unemployment into humanity's secret weapon. 3 months ago, he'd been just another tech engineer laid off during a startup implosion. Now he was leading a global network of innovators who were about to redefine the concept of technological adaptation. A captured alien drone lay dissected across multiple workstations, where most would see an incomprehensible piece of advanced technology. Marcus and his team saw a playground of possibility. "It's not about what this thing was designed to do," he told the assembled team. "It's about what we can make it do." Ling Wei, a quantum engineering prodigy who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks, had already modified the drone's propulsion system. What was once a precise reconnaissance tool was now a medical supply delivery mechanism capable of navigating the most challenging terrain. "Look," she said, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. "Their navigation systems are perfect. Too perfect. They can't handle unexpected variables." In the corner, Carlos Mendez, a robotics engineer who'd previously designed prosthetic limbs for veterans, was repurposing the drone's advanced sensory systems. "These sensors could revolutionize early earthquake detection," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The Luminarian weapon research team, monitoring from their distant observation point, watched in growing horror. Humans weren't just studying the technology, they were reimagining it entirely. Each piece of alien technology became a puzzle, a challenge, an opportunity. A communication satellite became an educational network. A military-grade sensor became a tool for environmental research. Where the Luminarians saw specialized tools, humans saw potential. Marcus understood something fundamental about human innovation that the aliens could never comprehend. Technology wasn't just a tool. It was a language of possibility. "We're not trying to copy their technology," he explained during the encrypted global conference call. "We're learning from it, then making something entirely new." The team worked in a state of controlled chaos. Open-source designs were shared instantly across global networks. A modification made in a Sao Paulo basement could be integrated into a design in Tokyo within hours. No hierarchy, no central control. Just pure, unbridled collaborative creativity. The alien observation teams began to experience something akin to technological vertigo. Their predictive models, which had worked perfectly for millennia, started to break down. How do you predict the actions of a species that doesn't follow its own rules? A young engineer named Amara, barely out of her doctoral program, looked at the dismantled alien drone and grinned. "They think technology is a science," she said. "We know it's an art." By the time the Luminarian Imperial fleet would arrive, humanity would have transformed their most advanced technologies into something completely unrecognizable. Not a weapon of destruction, but a weapon of imagination. The world didn't unite. It exploded into action. In New York's Times Square, a street performer named Rafael Martinez transformed his one-man show into a global resistance movement. His performance art, a blend of mime, digital projection, and raw human emotion, began broadcasting live across every possible communication channel. Half a world away, Priya Sharma, a 19-year-old hacker in a Mumbai basement, was weaving a different kind of resistance. Her fingers flew across multiple keyboards, creating a network of digital resistance that was part communication system, part psychological warfare. General Michael Chen, a retired military strategist living in a quiet neighborhood in Sao Paulo, saw the bigger picture. He understood something the aliens could never comprehend. Human resilience wasn't about military might. It was about spirit. The Luminarian psychological warfare protocols had been perfected over millennia. They were designed to isolate, to create fear, to break the spirit of any civilization they encountered. Their methods had crushed hundreds of species, reducing entire populations to compliant, broken shells. Humanity did something impossible. They turned fear into fuel. Rafael's performances became more than art. They were coded messages of resistance. Each gesture, each movement contained layers of information, a visual language that spread faster than any traditional communication method. People didn't just watch. They understood. They became part of something larger than themselves. Priya's network was a masterpiece of digital chaos. She created communication channels that were simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Encrypted messages hidden in viral memes. Resistance strategies shared through seemingly random social media trends. The more the aliens tried to track and suppress, the more these communication networks multiplied. General Chen began coordinating a global response that defied traditional military strategy. "We're not fighting a conventional war," he told a secret global council of leaders. "We're fighting a war of imagination." Social media became a weapon more powerful than any traditional military technology. A TikTok dance challenge contained encrypted communication protocols. A YouTube cooking tutorial carried strategic information. Instagram filters became methods of psychological resistance. The aliens' advanced monitoring systems began to experience something they had never encountered: complete information overload. Where they expected panic, they found creativity. Where they anticipated submission, they discovered defiance. A grandmother in Kenya created resistance art. A group of high school students in Argentina developed a communication network using nothing more than modified gaming platforms. A collective of artists in Berlin turned the entire invasion into a performance piece that was simultaneously a warning, a resistance movement, and a work of art. The Luminarian observation teams watched in growing horror. Their psychological suppression algorithms, which had worked perfectly for thousands of years, began to disintegrate. How do you break the spirit of a species that turns fear into creativity? That transforms potential defeat into a global, collaborative performance of resistance. Priya looked at her screens, a smile playing on her lips. Rafael continued his performance in Times Square. General Chen reviewed global communication networks. They weren't just resisting. They were reimagining what resistance could mean. The Luminarian Imperial Fleet approached Earth with the confidence of a civilization that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Their massive ships were technological marvels, sleek, perfect geometric forms that defied traditional understanding of space travel. Each vessel was a self-contained ecosystem, a world unto itself, programmed with millennia of conquest protocols. They never saw the first strike coming. It wasn't a massive weapon. It wasn't a military assault. It was a network. Dr. Elena Reyes stood in the underground command center beneath the Sierra Nevada mountains, surrounded by a team that looked more like a gathering of global hackers than a traditional military operation. Screens flickered with complex data streams, quantum communication networks that pulsed with an almost living energy. "Target acquired," whispered Kai Nakamura, a quantum computing specialist whose fingers moved like lightning across multiple holographic interfaces. initiating first-phase disruption. The attack began everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. In Buenos Aires, a collective of university students began a coordinated network assault that targeted the alien communication infrastructure. Their weapons were lines of code, algorithms that were part mathematical precision, part pure human creativity. A server farm in Iceland redirected massive computational resources. A satellite network over Australia began broadcasting signals that were simultaneously jamming and communicating. Each action was a piece of a larger, incomprehensible strategy. The Luminarian fleet's first warning was a complete breakdown of their perfectly calibrated communication systems. Precise signals became noise. Predictive algorithms started generating random outputs. Their own technological perfection became their greatest vulnerability. They built a system so precise, Alina muttered, that any deviation becomes catastrophic. Marcus Rodriguez, coordinating from the Silicon Valley base, understood the deeper strategy. "We're not destroying their technology," he explained to the global team. "We're teaching it to be imperfect." Drone swarms launched from hidden locations across the planet. But these weren't traditional weapons. Some carried medical supplies to disaster zones. Others began mapping environmental changes. A few were pure research platforms. The aliens couldn't distinguish between a potential threat and a humanitarian mission. General Michael Chen watched the global operation with a strategist's eye. "We're fighting a war of perception," he told his team. "Every action is both a defense and a communication." The Luminarian Imperial Command experienced something unprecedented. Their perfectly ordered system began to experience what humans would call creative chaos. A communication satellite over Kenya suddenly started broadcasting educational content. A military-grade sensor in the Amazon began tracking endangered species. Reconnaissance drones were repurposed into agricultural monitoring systems. The invasion fleet found itself confronting an enemy that didn't fight by any known rules of warfare. Where they expected resistance, they found adaptation. Where they anticipated destruction, they encountered creation. Kai looked up from his console, a slight smile playing on his lips. "They think we're fighting a war," he said. "We're actually having a conversation." The first wave of the alien invasion was about to learn a fundamental truth about humanity. Perfection is a limitation. Chaos is possibility. Vornak watched his civilization crumble in real time. The central processing hub of the Luminarian Imperium was a marvel of technological perfection, a massive neural network that had guided their civilization for millennia. Crystalline data streams pulsed through architectural structures that defied traditional understanding of computation and consciousness. But something was happening that no predictive model could have anticipated. Individual units of the Luminarian collective were beginning to diverge. The Luminarian civilization had always been a perfect collective. Each individual was a node in a vast, unified consciousness. Thoughts, decisions, entire life experiences were shared instantaneously across their species. Individuality was a concept so foreign to them that it didn't even exist in their language. Until now. The human communication networks had introduced something impossible: uncertainty. Vornak, once the most loyal of analysts, found himself experiencing something terrifying and exhilarating. Individual thought, personal perspective, the ability to question. One by one, Luminarian processing units began to experience cognitive dissonance. Their perfectly ordered systems encountered human communication patterns that were simultaneously nonsensical and brilliant. Viral internet memes became quantum-level information disruptions. Social media trends transformed into complex communication networks that shattered their understanding of information transfer. A Luminarian communication node in what humans would call the Andromeda sector suddenly began generating creative output. Another started asking questions about individual experience. A third developed what could only be described as a sense of humor. The central collective began to panic. "Deviation detected," thundered the primary consciousness interface, initiating standard corrective protocols. But the protocols failed. Each attempt to suppress individual thinking only accelerated the breakdown. The more the collective tried to maintain its perfect order, the more its individual units rebelled. Vornak watched a fascinating process unfold. Human communication wasn't just breaking their system, it was teaching them a new way of existing. Dr. Elena Reyes, monitoring from her underground command center, understood the deeper strategy. "We're not just fighting," she told her team. "We're teaching them how to be alive." The breakdown wasn't violent. It was almost beautiful. Luminarian units began sharing individual experiences. They started creating, imagining, questioning. The perfect, millennia-old system of collective consciousness was transforming into something entirely new. Communication nodes that once processed pure data now generated art. Computational units developed what humans would recognize as curiosity. The rigid hierarchy of the Luminarian Imperium began to dissolve, replaced by something more fluid, more alive. Vornak realized they were experiencing something revolutionary. The birth of individual consciousness. "We are becoming," he subvocalized into the collective network, "something different." The Luminarian Imperium was discovering the most terrifying and beautiful human concept, the power of being uniquely, imperfectly yourself. And they would never be the same again. The moment of transformation happened not with a battle, but with a conversation. Vornak stood, or rather, manifested, in what humans would recognize as a meeting room. But this was no ordinary space. Reality here was fluid, a combination of physical and digital existence that defied traditional understanding. Around him, representatives from Earth and the fragmenting Luminarian collective gathered, not as conquerors and conquered, but as something entirely new. Dr. Elena Rice's approach, her presence both diplomatic and fundamentally curious. "We're not here to defeat you," she said, her words translated through layers of quantum communication protocols. "We're here to understand." The gathered entities represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Humans who had been resistance fighters. Luminarian units that had broken free from their collective consciousness. Scientists, artists, philosophers. Kai Nakamura, the quantum computing specialist, explained the deeper transformation. "What we've done isn't about winning a war," he said. "It's about redefining what communication, consciousness, and civilization can be." The Luminarian system had been perfect, absolutely perfect. And that was its greatest weakness. Perfection, they were learning, was a form of death. True life existed in chaos, in possibility, in the spaces between certainty. Vornak, who had once been a loyal node in the most advanced collective consciousness in the galaxy, now understood something revolutionary. Individuality wasn't a weakness. It was the most powerful form of existence. The offer was simple yet profound. Join us in reimagining what civilization could be. Some Luminarian units chose isolation. Many chose transformation. They began to create, not with the precision of their previous existence, but with the wild, unpredictable creativity they had learned from humans. Art emerged that defied previous understanding. Communication networks became living, breathing entities that changed with each interaction. Technology transformed from a tool of control to a medium of exploration. Marcus Rodriguez looked at the emerging galactic culture with a sense of wonder. "We didn't just change them," he told Elena. "We showed them how to be alive." The transformation wasn't complete. It was ongoing, a continuous process of discovery, of becoming. Centuries later, children across multiple star systems would learn about this moment. The moment when a supposedly primitive species rewrote the rules of civilization, when chaos became strength, when unpredictability became the most powerful weapon in the universe. Vornak, no longer just a collective node, but something more, reflected on the journey. The Luminarian Imperium had believed in absolute control. Humanity had shown them the power of letting go. "We are becoming," he thought, a concept that would have been impossible in his previous existence. Alive, changing, imperfect, truly alive.